Okay, let me try to share one more time. I don't get while it's not doing it. Anyway, so the story, let's begin with prayer, and then we'll get started on this section today. I got to minimize this so I can see all of you. Okay, I'll put it down there like that. Let's pray, shall we? And then we'll get started. Dear Lord, help us as we understand, as we look at this section today and discuss the whole concept of the wanderings of the Israelites. And we just pray, Lord, that there's some lessons here that I think we can learn for our living in this day and age today. So we ask for your guidance in all of this. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. When we get done today, we will have finished the first 5 books of the Bible. This is actually lesson number 6. We've actually been at it for 7 times. We talked about creation. We talked about up at the beginnings. It was called From Creation to Abraham. We spent some time on Abraham. Then we talked about the building of the nation. We then talked about the story of Joseph and the way God protected the nation through him being in Egypt. And then we went through the Exodus, and today we're going to deal with the wandering, which is in large part it's a sad story, really, of the wandering of Israel in the wilderness for 40 years. And I put on the notes in parentheses, this is a lost generation. These are the ones that God came along and rescued with all kinds of miracles, right? I mean, all of the plagues, and then ultimately the parting of the Red Sea. They saw that. They saw water taken from the rock. They saw all kinds of miracles, and yet they spent their entire time complaining about everything. So, and again, this is a story that is described in the book of in the books of Numbers, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and is mostly just the description of the law. It's like going down to your local courthouse and reading the law that's on file. It was the law of Moses, on what to eat and all of these things. It included the 10 Commandments, obviously, too. That was given to us in Exodus and then repeated again in Deuteronomy. So I just to give you a kind of a history of what happened here. And I don't know why I can't share this, because that irritates me. Let me try it again. There it is. Okay. Can you see that? You can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, there it is. Let me also increase it so I can read it. So, and by the way, John and Linda, just to let you know, I don't want to just lecture this whole time. So if you have questions or you have comments or things you want to add, please just feel free. There's a way to raise your hand on the screen. Try doing that, Beth. Raise your hand. You see it there? I can't remember.
Hold on.
Oh, there. Trudy says she's raising her hand. There it is. See the little thing there? So what's your question, Trudy?
Okay.
What are you looking at?
This, well, it's gone now.
Oh,
It was up there. It was a little yellow raised hand.
At the bottom of the screen, it says reactions on mine. And if you click on it, then you can choose raise hand or put a heart up. Or
I didn't see anything on mine.
I don't see that now, because the only thing that's there is the are the notes.
Now I see a hand and a heart on Trudy's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, just interrupt me. Okay, that's supposed to be, I want it to be a discussion and I want you to share. So here are the events of what happened. Let me, they set out from Sinai. What happened at Sinai? You remember from last time? Mount Sinai, they received the message in the cloud. Isn't that a funny thing with, never mind. It's the law of Moses. They were given the 10 commandments and they sent out, and from the very beginning, as I mentioned, they were complainers. They whined about everything. Ran out of water. There were 2 instances in the wandering years where they run out of water. This one was at the waters of Meribah. The waters were bitter. That is a passage, that is an example that is used in the book of Hebrews about the hardening of the heart. The writer of Hebrews says, don't harden your heart as the people did at Meribah. And so there's no, the rock, the water's bitter. God tells Moses to strike the rock. He strikes the rock and water gushes out. By the way, here in Southwest Ohio, a lot of water gushing out of the sky at the moment. So, but how's the weather in Florida?
Hot.
Yeah, very hot. It was cloudy. Thought we would get some rain, but we didn't.
Okay. So it's going to get hot here in a couple of days. We're going to need the air conditioner, Trudy. So anyway, he talks to he strikes the rock and water comes out. Another key event is Aaron and Miriam, his older brother and sister, complain about him. I just love the stories, the history, or the people in the Bible. They complain about him. Do anybody know what they complained against Moses is? Okay, it was he married a non-Israelite. He married a Cushite woman, I believe it was, and so they're complaining about it. And I love God's response to him. He gathers the 3 of them together and he says to Aaron and Miriam, he said, I speak to God. I speak to prophets in many ways, some through dreams and visions. He said, I speak to Moses face to face. And so he puts them in their place. Miriam actually gets leprosy and has it for a few days until God, under the prayer of Moses, heals her. And this is another example. Remember, at the burning bush, God wanted Moses to go alone, and Moses kept saying, I can't do this by myself. I can't talk. I can't do this other thing. So finally, God relents and gives him Aaron and Miriam. And this was another example of the problem that caused. The big event in the wandering years is found in the spying out the land, which is found in the book of Numbers. And God says to them, to Moses, I want you to send 12 spies, 1 from each tribe, into the promised land, and I want you to spy it out. So they're there 40 days, and they find an amazing land filled with milk and honey. Anybody afraid of? Anybody understand what that term milk and honey refers to? This is more than a pregnant pause. Well, I'm not exactly.
Sorry.
Go ahead. What's that?
Sorry, I got distracted. The kids came in and then they left and
Okay.
so I missed that.
I'm not exactly sure what it means, except that it refers to, Russ, you're a Bible scholar. What do you think?
Yeah, it's I think it was it's just referring to that everything there that they saw was plentiful and bountiful, and I'm not sure if this was the land of giants. I don't remember if that was in there, but it's just that everything that they saw was the best of the best, and that was the place to be.
Right. That's exactly right. And you are right, Russ. There were giants in the land. And so 10 of them go in there, and 12 of them go in. 10 were afraid. They see the obstacles that stood ahead. Again, another indication or an example of how this generation that was lost were just, it's unbelievable. And 10 of them were afraid, and 2 of them believed that God would use them. And of course, those 2 are Joshua and Caleb. I doubt any of you here, including me, could name any of the other 10. Because when they rebelled against God, God actually judged them, and these 10 died instantly of a plague. And then the people woke up and they said, we can do this. We want to do it. So they went up and they on their own tried to invade, and they were defeated in battle. And the judgment that God placed upon them was there was going to be 40 years of wandering, 1 year for each of the 40 days they spied out the land. So for 40 years they wandered, and every person 20 years and older was going to died in the wilderness. And the second generation, their children, were the ones that God actually used to enter the land. And again, 40 years of wandering lead to multiple examples of rebellion against God over and over and over again. And even after this, there were, I won't go into a lot of details here, but there was like Korah rebelled against Moses, and there were others who rebelled against Moses. And then somewhere along the line, there's this interesting story where they need water again. And God says to Moses, I want you to go and I want you to speak to the rock. And Moses is really irritated, and he goes up and he actually strikes the rock. And because of that, God judges him and says to him, you can't enter the land. And I always find this story to be interesting and harsh. I mean, it's clear that God clearly said to Moses, speak to the rock, but in reality, Moses in anger strikes the rock, and God says, okay, because of that, I'm not going to let you enter the land. And what's interesting to me was, you think about all the stuff Moses went through, right? All of the people that caused him nothing but problems, and he was complaining about him and rebelling against him. So he loses his cool one time and strikes a rock, and God says, okay, that's it. You can't enter the land. There are those who talk about this being, the fact that related to Jesus and being a one-time sacrifice. I've never really quite bought into some of the theories as to why this was wrong, but he clearly disobeyed God is what he did. He clearly disobeyed God, and God judged him. But what I find really cool about this is so how does God punish Moses? He takes him up on Mount Nebo on a private view of the land, and he shows him the whole land from the south down by the Dead Sea up to the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean Sea. Man, I would have loved to have been at that meeting where God is showing Moses the land, and then he takes him home, and God buries him up there somewhere, and they never find the grave of Moses, and I think for good reason, because they'd have made a shrine out of it. If you've ever been to Israel, everything in Israel has a shrine. So anyway, God takes Moses up on Mount Nebo and shows him the land, and then takes him home to heaven. And he reappears at the Mount of Transfiguration in the Gospels when Jesus goes up on the mountain. He comes back with Elijah, I believe it is, and he appears again. So that's the history of this generation. Do you have any questions or thoughts on any of what I've just kind of shared? A brief overview.
I think about, like, if a group of us were to have to be out in the wilderness for even a whole day, how much complaining would we do? And I am so guilty, because just the other day at work, I complained because the machine wasn't working and I couldn't get a cold water, and I had to get water out of the drinking fountain, and it's just so so hard to even imagine being in there in 40 years of wondering. And I couldn't survive an afternoon, I don't think.
Yeah. The other thing that I forgot to mention in this too, that you brought that up, made me think of this, Trudy. This was also when God provided manna for them. And I
Yeah,
left that off the list here for some reason. It was on there when I was doing it earlier, but
that's a
manna,
lot of manna.
yeah, right.
But
And
there
then
was
they-
no chocolate though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. But it
No
tasted
chocolate.
like coriander seed with honey, so it was a sweet thing, right?
Yeah.
But they complained
The same
about
thing
that
over
too.
and over.
Yeah.
I know.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's sorry. My grandmother was born in 1926 and she survived the Depression. And she told of one winter, her family had nothing but wheat out of the grain bin, and that's what they ate, boiled wheat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 3 months. And I just can't imagine that. And you'd be really tired of wheat and manna and all these things.
Right.
You know, I look at these things as something that our country could very well go through. And that's, you know, to teach us a lesson. I mean, all these things I think are to teach us a lesson. And it doesn't hurt to suffer and do without for a period. I think I think it's a way of God teaching us something.
Right. I agree. By the way, we ate good in Florida, but John, I gained a pound. So that's pretty
See, you
good.
got a haircut too.
Yes, I got a haircut finally, and so did Beth.
And I gained about 4 pounds.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
A little personal note to the rest of you that really don't care. Well, yeah, Trudy's
Back on track.
It was those pralines.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Oh.
anyway, that's the story. I want to just draw some lessons here that I think are important for us to understand. Again, of course, John and Linda, you're just joining us, but one of the themes of the book is that they talk about an upper story, STORY, and a lower story. The upper story being God's overall plan for everything. That's the upper story. And the
Mhm.
lower story is our story. You know, we each have a story. You know, John and I were friends, and those of you that watched on Facebook, you know, 64 is the last time I saw him, and then he lived his whole life, and I lived my life, and now we've come back together and reunited. But our story is all different. You know, we were going through everything that, you know, we'd gone through since then, and sharing these stories. And everyone, as I look at your picture, has a story. And so we have God's overall plan for mankind, and then into that plan, he fits our stories, and he wants us to use our experiences and our lives to further the gospel, to further his message. And this generation was blinded by blessing. That phrase is not something that I came up with. That was a part of the study material. Blinded by blessing. And Trudy, you and John kind of touched on it. We are so blessed in America that you're irritated because you couldn't get a cold water versus a water, you know, having water from a water fountain. And I'm not criticizing you, because I'm that way a lot. I get mad when the internet goes down. I mean, come on. And so we get blinded by everything that we have. And that's what happened to them. And in those early days, God provided for them everything, and they couldn't see it. And then the other thing is the more we get without effort, the more we want without effort. And that's human nature, right? People who live off of the benefits that they don't earn. And I'm not talking about people who genuinely have need. Nobody wants to deny people who need help. But people who don't need help, but continue to use it, they yes, I see that hand.
I figured it out. I think we have so many modern conveniences these days, and yet we're more impatient, way more impatient.
Right.
And but we supposedly have all these technology and different things that are supposed to make our life so much easier to do things faster. And yet, yes,
I don't know
John
how to
raised
raise my hand. I don't know.
I,
Am I supposed to hit something? I guess
yeah,
you see it.
that what you're doing works too. That's another way of doing it.
I was just gonna say our country today is a perfect example of getting without effort.
Right.
This
It's like the
generation
more we have,
will-
the less we appreciate it.
Right.
Mm,
Yep.
exactly.
Everybody wants instant gratification. They want it now. They want it yesterday, you know? And it's a spoiled generation, not realizing what it's like to do without. They don't
Right.
know what it's like to do without this last generation or two. Have no idea.
Right. So they were blinded by blessing. The second thing is, and this is something that is so easy for all of us, is to be paralyzed by fear. The 10, that shouldn't be tribes. Let me change. That's the nice thing about this. I can change it. The 10 spies saw the obstacles. And were there obstacles in that land? Of course there were. There were giants. And next week when we deal with Joshua, we're going to talk about some of the things they went through. God doesn't just give us things, right? He promises us things, but we have to work for it. They saw the obstacles and they were afraid. Joshua and Caleb saw the opportunities. The same things that they saw, the other two saw as obstacles, they saw as Caleb. And one of my favorite stories, and we may touch on it next week, is when they got into the land, Caleb goes to Joshua. Now he's 84 years old, and he says to Joshua, "Hey, dude, God promised me this mountain. Now I'm going to get it." And he was 84 years old when he went to do it. So they had the power of faith. And I think that one of the things that I think that so many of us who follow Jesus and those who don't, we do spend a lot of time in our lives being afraid. And we shouldn't be afraid, or we shouldn't live in fear. We're always going to have fear, but because we do face obstacles, right? I mean, there are problems we face in life, and it's not that we live in this Pollyanna existence where everything is good. No, it's not good. But the power of the faith of these two guys, Joshua and Caleb, had them overcome the obstacles and saw them as opportunities. My clock says we have about 5 minutes. And so I'm going to kick this off the screen so I can see all of you. Does Rhett have any questions tonight?
You have any questions? No. He said no.
Okay. Are you enjoying the book?
Yes, I'm about half a chapter behind, but I'm getting there.
Cool. All right. Any other questions? Dave, is Robin okay?
Oh yeah, she just couldn't make it tonight. She
Okay.
sent me a text saying I won't be able to make it. Well, I don't know
Well,
where
you
she's
can-
at. Of course, I'm 100 miles away. But
Right. By the way, Dave is a fire inspector. He goes around where there's fires and figures out what caused them. And so he's in Huntington. He travels all over the world. He was in Alaska. And
Is that right?
he was doing, there was a postal vehicle that got burned up there at the Seward cutoff.
yeah,
So I don't know.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember
was in-
that.
I was in Ketchikan.
You haven't been
Mexican.
up for that postal truck fire, have you?
No, that was a third party, so it wasn't a postal truck. It was a third party truck.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So
third
it's not
party, but
ours.
you haven't
I think
been
it
up
was-
there for that.
I think it was
No.
UPS.
Oh, was it UPS?
Yeah, it was. No, it was USPS, but it was a contractor.
Right. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay, any final questions? We're down, we're down, I'm pretty much of a stickler to being done at a half hour. So,
I downloaded the book on my Kindle. Do we just read the chapter before class?
yeah, the next chapter will be chapter 7, called A Few Good Men. No, excuse me, The Battle Begins.
Okay.
The battle begins. I think it's, make sure, yeah, it's chapter 7.
Okay.
And I always send out a worksheet, either something that I've kind of edited. I have a lot of material and I'll edit it just as a study guide to go through to help us, stay on course. So
I'll try to be better prepared next week.
I thought you did well. I thought you did well. Let's see here. I'm going to give you one of these. What do you think of that?
What?
Got
Do
a
we get
thumbs
gold
up.
star?
The
Oh,
thumbs
Yeah.
up.
thumbs up.
Yeah.
See, I don't know how you do all that.
You go down to reactions and then you can give, now I'm gonna laugh at you.
If I knew where the reactions were.
Right. Yeah, I don't see them either.
Okay.
It was
if you just
nice
bring your-
meeting you all.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Good
too.
to have you with us. Russ, good to see you. We still need to get
Thank you.
together for coffee sometime.
Indeed. Look forward to it.
All right. So let's say goodbye tonight. We'll see you next week. Look for the notes. I'll send them out hopefully by Monday or so. And then the invite will go out. So we'll go from there. So I'm going to stop recording